Hello and welcome back to the Zenjutsu Dojo. I'm Dr. Chris Warholic, and today I'm going to give a presentation on a technique called One Word, One Breath. Before I begin, I'd like to thank a very dear friend of mine, Mr. Gregory Lippold, for sharing his space with me. We're here today at the Kathmandu Trading Company in Hilo, Hawaii, so thank you so very much. Mr. Lippold is actually known to me very lovingly as Uncle Tim, so thank you very much, Uncle Tim, for sharing your space. I'm grateful for you. So let's talk about why one word, one breath is important. Well, as I go through daily life, I see people, whether it's in the grocery store getting frustrated or at the gas station getting agitated or road rage, having heightened levels of sympathetic drive. Whether or not it's anxiety, just low levels, ranging the entire way to sheer panic, which I see a lot in the emergency room. That increases your sympathetic drive. On the other hand, you could have feelings such as frustration, which can brew and turn into outright rage. And that, in addition, increases your sympathetic nervous system. Why is that so important? Well, because that process, if you are chronically in that state, is ultimately killing you. And there's evidence to show that. So we all have it, including myself. I developed this technique really as I was going through residency. You can be awake for 24 to 30 hours and your hormones are all out of whack, your cortisol, your circadian rhythms are all out of whack, and you find yourself constantly anxious. So how do you manage that? How do you sort of take charge of, you can never completely control it, but control at least as much of that process as possible so it doesn't have all those negative downstream effects? Well, let's start off by telling you exactly what happens when you are in that state of heightened sympathetic drive. There are several processes. It's not just the nervous system, but we'll start with the nervous system. The autonomic nervous system, which the sympathetic nervous system belongs to, is a balance between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's the autonomic nervous system is a balance between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic, obviously, is fight, flight, and freeze, and parasympathetic is fun and food, or also rest and digest. So if you think about it like that, they're always in balance. Well, they're not always in balance, but they counterbalance each other. So if you're chronically at a heightened state of sympathetic drive, that's when you have all those negative downstream effects, which we'll talk about. So the other portion of the nervous system is the vagus nerve. That's one of the only nerves that comes directly from the brain, or is the only nerve that comes directly from the brain and innervates your organs, such as your lungs, your heart, your GI system. It's really the mind-body connection. Most people will recognize that nerve when they feel a state of like sheer panic. You feel it in here, in through your throat, your chest, your neck. Also, people can have that feeling when they feel love, and I guess which is a different but not so different feeling, but it's in the same place. It's an alarm system, really, is what it is. So that feeling of impending doom, it really is felt right here. That is this nerve, the mind-body connection, the vagus nerve. Well, those two nervous systems, the autonomic nervous system and the vagus nerve, are tied together, and they affect what's called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which you have a small gland about the size of an acorn in your brain called the hypothalamus. It secretes all kinds of hormones, sort of the same way if you're sitting here thinking about a lemon, that it causes your tongue to secrete saliva, right? Or your mouth to secrete saliva. It's very similar. The only thing is those hormones that creates have a very large downstream effect on your adrenal gland. So your hypothalamic pituitary axis release hormones which increase or cause a release of hormones from your adrenal glands, whether that's cortisol, whether it's hormones that that regulate your kidneys, whether that's adrenaline. It has a great impact on your body. And ultimately, so what you think, what your nervous system is experiencing, will eventually design not only your brain, but your body. So heightened levels of cortisol will make you eat more. You'll become obese. It'll make you sleep poorly, so you become depressed. It'll make you anxious, so you end up becoming addicted to things. So the downstream effects are just tremendous, and I can't overstate that. And once again, what you think designs your body, can eventually have a very detrimental effect if you don't control it. So the purpose of this presentation or this technique is to introduce you to the processes by which you can actually start to regulate that process yourself, right? Which would be a great gift to have. If you could decrease that chronic state of sympathetic drive, so get it to decrease the sympathetic tone and increase the parasympathetic tone, which is the rest and relax tone, that's very helpful. And once again, has tremendous benefits in the long term, short term and long term. So it's really learning how to self-regulate. Now, this technique is not going to teach you all of that in one quick step, but it's the beginning of that process, right? So let's go through the technique itself. It's relatively easy. I developed this technique probably over the course of medical school, and it came together and after I graduated from medical school, just to help me with this process. The technique, 1 word, 1 breath. So come up with a phrase, 3 to 5 words. So my technique or my phrase is, this moment is perfect. For me, that's the root of this moment is the perfect teacher. That means that, well, if I can catch myself, I can teach myself how to not go down that path, and I can control what's going on in my body as opposed to subconsciously my brain controlling what's going on in my body. So come up with a 3 to 5 word phrase. This moment is perfect for me. You're going to relax. You can do this whether you're walking. I do it a lot of times before I go into a room where a patient, might be coding or dying, and we've got to do what we can to save them. Or if a patient's overdosed on drugs and is throwing punches or trying to spit at you, or even sometimes if I'm just getting frustrated when someone cuts me off, instead of throwing a inappropriate hand signal or swearing, you just sort of take a deep breath and do this technique. So this moment is perfect. So take a deep breath in. And on the out breath, say the first word in your head. Okay, so I'll say, so I guess I put that 4th finger up a little bit too quickly, but this moment is perfect. Feel what you want to do is go from thinking of the word to experiencing your body. Your vagus tone, how is it? If it feels at a heightened state or anxious state, breathe that out. And just opening the lungs up down regulates the sympathetic drive and up regulates the parasympathetic drive. So there's a ton of evidence, like scientific evidence, to show why this technique works. I can't stress that enough. This is all evidence-based. More research has to be done. But if you just try it a couple of times, in particular when you are in that state, you'll come to discover that it'll work yourself. Just try it yourself. That's my recommendation. I'm not, here to sort of espouse to any great wisdom. Really, these are all gifts that you have at birth. And I just had to learn how to use them again myself, because in this world that we live in, it's very stressful. I knew that the ultimate effects were very detrimental because of my study in medicine, and how do I fix that problem? And that's why I bring this technique to you. So last but not least, let's talk about how our brains can sort of foster that process and keep that sympathetic drive elevated. I first learned this sort of phraseology probably from Pema Chodron, but I've seen it subsequently in a lot of different sort of texts, not just Buddhist, but mainly in Buddhist texts. It's called the first dart, second dart sort of analogy. So when we have the first dart, like a bear's attacking you, that's the first dart. It increases your sympathetic drive, right? That makes sense. So that's probably a good time not to practice 1 word, 1 breath, otherwise you'll get eaten. But what you do is, let's say for instance it's something that comes to mind, like you hear a voice or something triggers a memory, and all of a sudden, or an experience, or hypoglycemia, other things increase your sympathetic drive. You find yourself anxious, right? Bring yourself into the now, right? The problem is if you don't do that, your brain actually grabs a hold of that, your simulator, so that thing that is sort of the predicto machine, trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future or predict the future, it goes into play. and it increases that. So it's the second dart. Oh my God, what happens if? Oh my God, what happens if? Oh my God, what happens if? And then your body starts to feel it, and then all of a sudden your heart races, and then your brain starts to think, oh my God, my heart's racing, and oh my God, I feel it. Oh my God, So all of those things are the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth darts, to the point where your sympathetic nervous system's always on overdrive, right? You can't shut it down. If you can just stop at the first dart and realize, I'm not going to worry about that dart. Stop setting up the target, as they say. If you can realize that that first dart really does not need to have you throwing all the other darts at it, and you can bring yourself back to a lowered state of sympathetic drive, that heart rate won't increase, all those other negative things won't happen. You can truncate that process of the simulator, or the brain going through that process of feeding that negativism, and you will downregulate your sympathetic nerve and upregulate your parasympathetic nervous system. And that's it. One word, one breath. Try it at home. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. I certainly enjoyed giving it, and I hope that it helps you as much as it's helped me. Thank you so very much for your time. I'm grateful for you watching. So once again, from the Zenjutsu Dojo, thank you and namaste.